Alright, so this one's not going to be as long as my other reviews because the only reason I'm doing this movie is because there's an important lesson here. So, it's an interesting movie, there's no doubt about that. And you got to hand it to him for originality, too. It was like the first found footage horror movie, and they started a whole trend that lasted about 10 years. And the first time I seen this movie when I was a kid, the reason it got so much press was because no one knew if it was real. There was like a rumor going around that someone found some footage of some people who got killed in the woods by a witch. But as it turns out, it's a movie. And then the rumor was that it was just 3 independent film students who made this movie in the woods with just them 3 and a couple of cameras. But the truth is there was a whole production crew and all that. So it wasn't a big budget movie by any stretch of the imagination. It was an independent, I think it was like a low budget independent film. But they still had a production and all that, a production crew, directors and producers and everything. So it wasn't just a couple of kids in the woods with cameras. If it was, it would be a really amazing accomplishment. Although truthfully, it's an amazing accomplishment either way. They spent 60 grand making the movie, and they made something like, I don't know, 60 million or something. It's some insane. It's like the biggest profit margin in the history of movies with that one. So, you got to hand it to them for those things. And the thing that bothers me about this movie is it could have been so much better. You know what I mean? But when you're the first one doing something and you don't really know exactly what works and what doesn't, they did well all in all. It's an interesting movie. If you've never seen it, you should see it. Probably gonna, there's gonna be some spoilers ahead. So if you haven't seen it, you should see it and then come back to this, because I'm gonna tell you what happens in the end. And the only reason I'm doing this movie is because there's, in my opinion, there's an important lesson to be learned here. So, and it has nothing to do with the making of independent films or anything, although there's a lot to learn there too. It's like sometimes less is more. But in this case, I think they went a little too minimal. You know what I mean? There should have been a little more. I'll get to it. But so basically at this point, the legend of the Blair Witch is this woman named, her name was Edie Kedric or something like that. She immigrated from Ireland, and in Ireland, her parents were killed over something, and she was beaten and raped, and they just don't go into it too much. It's just that she has this tragic background, and then she immigrates to America. She ends up in the Blair Township in Maryland. Not really sure why, but that's where she ends up. And then this is in, like, I guess the 1700s. And then at some point, some kids in the township accuse her of witchcraft. And then all the townspeople just believe it, I guess, And then they banish her to the woods for a winter. And that's the last anyone's seen or heard of her. No one knows what happened to her. And then fast forward a couple of years, people are disappearing in the woods. And there's strange stories going around. But people aren't disappearing like every time they go in the woods. It only happens once every few decades. Because apparently she doesn't want them to be afraid of the woods. She wants them to keep coming so she can get her revenge sporadically. And apparently over time, all the kids who accused her of witchcraft ended up getting killed. And then fast forward to the 1940s, and there's some dude who built a house in these woods, and you find out that he was kidnapping kids and killing them in his house. And he ended up doing it like 7 times, and he would always make one face the wall while he killed the other one because he didn't want their eyes on him or whatever. Now, the reason he was doing this is because in the woods he was living in, every once in a while he'd see this woman dressed in all black, and he just felt afraid of her for some reason. He didn't know why, but every time he'd go to approach her, she would just kind of disappear, and he was kind of getting freaked out by it. Next thing he knows, she's talking to him in his dreams and telling him things, and he's like, he doesn't want to hear this voice in his head. It's bothering him, but she's telling him to do things, simple things, like go go cut down this tree branch and put it in your backyard or whatever. At first, it's real simple things. The next thing he knows, she's telling him to go into the town and kidnap this kid. And then the next thing he knows, she's telling him to kill these kids. And he ends up killing 7 kids. After he kills the 7th one, she tells him, all right, if you want me to leave you alone, go into the town, tell them what you did and why you did it. And so that's what he does. He goes into town. He admits to kidnapping and killing all the kids. He tells them all about the voice and the woman, and they execute him. But now the Blair Witch legend is like, now people are like, oh wow, there's a witch in these woods. Anyways, now from this point on, at one point, some little girl goes missing in the woods, and they send out a search party. While the search party is out looking for this girl, the girl returns home, but the search party never does. And everyone's like, what the hell happened to the search party? I guess the search party was maybe 4 guys with guns. And so they go into the woods searching for the search party. They end up finding them on this rock called Coffin Rock. I guess they named it Coffin Rock because they found these 4 guys dead on the rock, and they were tied hand and foot in some like star pattern, but they were all gutted, like, you know, eviscerated, like someone cut their stomach open and pulled their intestines out. But they could tell by the bleeding and by inspecting the bodies that it was done while they were alive, like there was a struggle. So they're like, wow, who could do this to 4 armed men? You know what I mean? They're like, this is crazy. But they go back to the town to get more people to bring the bodies out. When they come back to the Coffin Rock where the bodies were, the bodies are gone, but there's still blood on the rocks, and they're like, what the hell's going on? So they leave the woods. They don't know what to do. The bodies are gone. Fast forward, 50 years or so, and here we are in the 90s, and 3 film students are going to do a documentary about the Blair Witch, and this is where the movie starts. And they don't even explain all this in the movie. They should have, but the problem is I don't think they had all this fleshed out for the first movie. But if they had, it would have been a way more interesting movie, in my opinion. They should have had the lore fleshed out. That's an important thing if you're making a story. You got to have the background and the lore set up. That's what makes a good story. That's why the Lord of the Rings is, that's why The Hobbit was such a brilliant book, because it had this entire universe going on in the background that you only hear little bits of it. So that's why the Lord of the Rings was so popular, because people were very interested in what was happening in the lore of Middle-earth. Game of Thrones is another perfect example. He's got this entire universe fleshed out, and so people are very interested in it. That's why it's so popular, if you ask me. Same with Star Wars. So the whole Blair Witch thing, they really should have fleshed out the lore before they did the movie, but they didn't. The lore in the movie is just, you just hear a couple of little things here and there. There's supposed to be a witch in the woods, and people come up missing every few decades, and that's about all you know. But so, the movie goes on. They're searching around in the woods for these certain landmarks. They're looking for Coffin Rock, which they find. Then they're looking for this supposed graveyard. And so they find Coffin Rock. They get lost a bunch of times. They're just ill-prepared. But when you see them getting out of the car, they have these huge hiking backpacks, the type of things that people use to hike the Appalachian Trail if they're gonna be out in the woods for months. But they're only planning on being out there for 2 days. But they've got these huge rigs on their back. And here's one thing I can tell you: if you're only camping for 2 days, you do not want to be carrying around everything you own on your back. Wait a minute. Okay, anyway, so they seem to be pretty well prepared, if you ask me, but once they get into the woods, they're, we don't know where we are. They've got a compass, they've got a map. If you got those 2 things, I don't know how you're going to get lost. Even if you don't have a compass, the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west, So as long as you can see the sun, you know vaguely what direction you're going in. Now, here's the other thing. If you're ever lost in the woods, what I've heard is you just find the stream or the river or whatever, go downstream. The little stream is going to lead to a river. The river is going to lead to people. So you just go downstream, find a body of water, go downstream. Eventually, you're going to find people. So, but anyways, they get lost as shit. Well, and the other thing is, in the movie, at some point, they're like passing the same landmarks they've already passed. I don't like when movies do this, when they defy the laws of physics, and it just becomes unbelievable to me. You know what I mean? Keep it realistic. You know what I'm saying? Especially a movie like this. But anyways, they're basically going in circles in the woods, and it makes no sense because they're going south the whole time. So if you're going south the whole time, there's absolutely no way you're going to be seeing the same landmarks over and over. So, but what the most interesting parts of this movie is when they're camping at night. The first night, nothing happens. Second night, you hear kids like giggling and screaming in the background, and you hear branches breaking and stuff, which is really interesting. They're like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? And then the next night, this is when they found like the graveyard, which was just kind of piles of rocks, and then like sticks tied in the shapes of kind of stars in the trees. And that night they have some serious disturbances. You hear the kids giggling and yelling a little bit, and the branches breaking, but it's like all around them, and it's a little more intense this time. Next thing you know, their tent starts going nuts as if it's surrounded by people, and all the people are hitting the tent like this. And at that point, they freak the fuck out. They run out of the tent and they just run. While they're running, the girl Heather is like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? Like, she sees something, but they don't show what it is. Now they should have showed like a flash of like a witch or something at that point. It would have made the movie so much better, you know, but they don't show it. They spend the night out in the woods that night. They're too afraid to go back to their tent. Next day they go back to their tent. Their stuff's scattered everywhere. And they realize that their tent is in the middle of 3 piles of rocks in the shape of a triangle, like dead center. They're like, what the hell? This wasn't there last night, you know? Anyways, the next night, I don't think anything happens, but when they wake up the next day, one of the dudes is missing. They're like, what the hell? They're looking for him all day. At this point, they're just kind of freaked out. They're in a total panic. They're screaming and fighting. And, you know, as time goes on, they start fighting with each other and screeching and screaming. And so here's the main lesson of this movie. It's like, when things get bad, you can't just start freaking out and screeching and screaming and going crazy. You know what I'm saying? That's the absolute last thing you should do. If I was with them at that point, I'd be really, really pissed. But I'd have to keep my mouth shut because I don't want to add to the chaos. But so, here's the thing. Panic and fear are pretty much useless. Now, fear is not useless. Fear is actually useful. If you use fear properly, it'll make you stronger. It'll make you more dangerous. I'll give you an example. I had this dangerous thug when I was staying at the internet cafe in Chinatown in Manhattan. There was this dangerous lunatic thug staying there, fresh out of Rikers Island. His only way to make money was robbing people, basically, and I could sense that he was planning on robbing me because I was one of the few people on the street who made money. So I could sense that he was going to be coming for me at some point. So instead of not staying there, I continued to stay in the internet cafe. I wasn't going to be ran out of the only home I had. Instead, I just mentally prepared myself to go to war with this dude. So every time I'd be going there at night, I'd be very careful, watching around every turn and every corner. Since I was afraid of him, my plan, it made me very, very angry. I let the fear fuel my rage. So basically, my plan was, I had a couple little weapons on me. I was gonna hurt this motherfucker if he came for me. And I got a feeling that he sensed that I was not gonna just lay down and let him have anything. I was gonna hurt him badly, or it was gonna be bad. It was gonna be bad for him. Even if he got everything out of me, I was gonna make him pay a big price for it. I'll just leave it at that. But I was afraid of him, but I was also ready to rip him to shreds. I was ready to hurt him badly, and that's because I was afraid of him. So my point is that you can use fear as a weapon. You can let it fuel and make you angry and aggressive instead of being intimidated and afraid. I had a choice there. I could be intimidated and afraid of him, or I could be a rabbit, or I could be a wolf. I chose to be a wolf. I believe he sensed it coming off of me, because it's not like I wanted to fight him or anything, but I was thinking to myself whenever I was around him, like, you can try, brother. You're welcome to try. I can tell you one thing, it's not going to be easy for you, and I'm going to do my best to do permanent damage to you. So that's what ended up happening. Was he ended up getting arrested not long after that and back to Rikers Island, which is fortunate for me. I didn't want to be in a fight like this, but I can tell you one thing, I was ready for it. And I believe he sensed it, and it made him kind of think maybe I should find a different target, because this dude is not big, but the energy coming off him is not fear, it's rage. So, you know, and I'm not saying I'm the baddest motherfucker on earth or nothing like that. What I am saying is I'm not just going to lay down and let nobody do nothing like that to me, unless they got a gun, which I knew he didn't have one. Whatever other weapons he had, I had weapons to match him. So, you know, and, you know, I might not be a big dude, but a leopard is not a big cat either, but a leopard will rip you to pieces. And that's exactly how I felt. You know, I was like, I'm big enough. I'm big enough to do damage to anyone on this earth. So that's, I was afraid, but I was using it as a weapon to fuel my anger and rage and aggression. And it helped me out in that case, because if I had gone the other route and been afraid and timid, he definitely would have just, went at me. But anyways, so that's the lesson here. If you're ever scared for your life or whatever, don't just sit there being intimidated and afraid, and because all that's going to do is make you lose, So let it fuel you, let it power you up, which is what I did. So what ends up happening is they're bickering with each other, this and that. What I would have done, I'm sure they had some sort of knife between them. They're camping in the woods. I would have carved us each some spears, one long, one short. Keep them at a distance. If they get in close, use the short one and do as much damage as you can. So that's what I would have done. I would have armed us all. I would have stopped wandering around the woods. They had these huge packs. They probably had some food. I would have set up a campsite under a tree somewhere, and I would have set lethal booby traps all around it, and then I would have left a light on in the tent, and maybe even one or two people in the tent. I would have sat in the tree with my weapons at the ready, waiting for anyone or anything to come around that tent. As soon as they do, I'm going to jump down, and I'm going to hurt them badly, and I'm going to try to keep them alive so I can get some answers out of them. How many of you are there? How do I get out of here? And this and that. So there's the lesson there. Don't let fear and panic cripple you. Let it make you more powerful, because it can literally do just that. It's done it for me. The more afraid I am of someone, the more damage I'm willing to do to them. I'll just put it to you that way. When I'm not that afraid of someone, I don't want to hurt them. But if I'm afraid of someone, I want to hurt them. So what ends up happening in the movie, now this is what really would have set me over the edge. The dude disappeared the next night. They're camping, and now they're really scared. That night, you can hear the dude that was with them, Josh, screaming somewhere off in the woods, as if he's being tortured. Now this would have really set me off. I would have waited till the morning, probably, because there's no point wandering around at night when you can't see nothing. But I would have tried to mark where that scream was and find it in the morning. But the other thing is, now when they wake up that morning, there's a bundle of sticks outside their tent, which they just kind of throw it aside. They're too freaked out to deal with it. But later on, they open it up. Inside is a piece of that dude Josh's shirt tied up in a bundle. They open it up. Inside, it's a bunch of teeth. So what happened was they pulled all that dude's teeth out the night before. Now at that point I know it's kill or be killed, because ain't nobody taking me alive and doing nothing like that to me. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to kill me in a fight. But now they're just like debilitated, crippled in fear, and I'm saying you got to take that fear and use it as a weapon. It can be fuel, it can be useful. So that's why fighters train so hard. It's a fear of the opponent. That's what gets them up early in the morning and running miles and training hard multiple times a day. It's fear. So, you know, you can let fear cripple you, or you can let it make you more powerful. It's you can choose one or the other. That's the main lesson here. So what happens is they're just wandering around the woods some more. No weapons. They haven't bothered to make any type of weapons. They find some house, and this is where they screw up again. They separate. One's running upstairs. Josh, I hear you. The other one's downstairs. Where'd you go? And it's like, you got two people, and y'all are fighting for your life, and you're just gonna separate and run around like morons. So that's what they do. At one point, the dude's going around this corner with his camera. The camera falls. You assume he got whacked over the head. I've run the footage back 100 times. There's nothing to see. Another missed opportunity. There should have been like a flash of someone, some scary looking something. You know what I mean? It just would have made the movie so much better. But they show nothing. And then she comes down. She's filming. And she sees that guy standing against the wall and not responding to her. She goes around the corner, her camera goes down, she got whacked over the head. It's like, I don't know, if someone put me against the wall and was waiting for the girl to come down, I would not have sat there not responding to her. I would have been like, there's a dude right there, let's get him. Since we would have had spears, because I would have made him for us, I would have been like, me and you right now to the death with this motherfucker, and trust me when I tell you, me and you were walking out of here and he is not. So, I mean, and here's the other thing. It's like, I've been in a situation not dissimilar to this. I don't want to make this video too long, but what happened was me and my friends were camping when we were about 15, and we were camping around this area of Florida. There's some woods here and there. We were in high school. We were in 9th grade. We were going camping, and so we're sitting in the woods that night. A couple of them were drinking. I didn't drink back then. And we had told one of our friends' brother we were going to camp in this part of the woods this night. And he's like, oh yeah, whatever, maybe we'll come by, whatever. Anyways, we're sitting there around the fire bullshitting. All of a sudden, we hear branches breaking and something big is coming. And we're like, what the fuck? And then we hear yelling, aggressive yelling. Like, it sounds like an angry man, but it sounds like there's like 10 of them coming through the woods, and we're shitting our pants. We're like 15 years old. We all go and huddle in the tent like, oh my god, we need to hide. And so my friend Jeff is like, dude, we're dead sitting in this tent. He's like, we got to get out there and we got to either fight or we got to run. And we're all like, Jeff, stop trying to be a hero, just stay in the tent and let them go by. And he's like, you guys are going to be dead if you just sit in the tent. He's like, I'm going out there. So Jeff goes out there. We all stay in the tent. We're like, oh my god, Jeff's going to get killed. And fucking, we look out the door and Jeff's standing there and he's got this log and he's ready to kill or die. Jeff's ready for war. And we're like, Jeff, get back in the tent, you know? And the next thing you know, these people come down, and it was our friend's brother and his friends just scaring the shit out of us. And I thought we were gonna die. Let me tell you something. And this experience was very valuable to me because I did panic and I did just freeze up like a little bunny rabbit. And I swore to myself, I vowed to myself, I will never do that again. Jeff was right, you know? And when they all came down and Jeff was ready for war, they were like, holy shit, Jeff is the only one of you guys that has any balls. And we're like, we can't argue with that, you know? Like, so I was grateful for them to them for teaching us that lesson that, you know, when shit goes down, you got to be like Jeff and be ready to either fight or run. They were like, what the hell were you guys going to do in the tent? They're like, we would have just killed all of yous. They were like, at least Jeff could have ran or he could have fight. He had options. You guys were just going to be dead. And we were like, no, you're right. That's a valuable, we were like, holy shit, that was crazy. We thought we were going to die. You know what I mean? But I vowed to myself after that, and it was a valuable lesson. Never again. Don't ever freeze up and just sit there waiting to get killed. You gotta fight for your life. You know what I mean? So there's the lesson in that movie. Just, fear is a powerful thing, and you can use it as a weapon. I've done it before, and I'm telling you, you can do it too. It's a decision that you make. Do I want to be crippled and helpless, or do I want to be, do I want to be a rabbit, or do I want to be a leopard? And I don't care if you're small or whatever. I'm not a big dude. I weigh like 150. I'm like 5'8", 150. But I'm very confident in my ability to defend myself, and I work out a lot, and I'm strong, and I don't feel like there's anyone on this earth that can just mop the floor with me. You know what I mean? I don't care how big they are, and if worse come to worse, if someone's trying to kill me or whatever, then I'm going to use weapons on them, and then I really don't care how big they are, because, you know what I mean? So you got to realize that you are a dangerous animal. You just got to realize that, and when things get nasty, remember that you are capable of doing a whole bunch of damage just as much. If it bleeds, you can kill it. You know what I mean? So whoever you're afraid of or whatever, don't be afraid. Realize that you are just as dangerous as anyone else on this earth. We are apex predators. We're the top of the food chain. So that's my first movie of the horror series that I'm going to do from now until Halloween. Now, the next movie I'm going to do, I guess, it is either going to be The Conjuring or The Witch. Do any of y'all have a preference for either of those? I love both those movies, and there's plenty to talk about in both of them. Or if anyone's got any other ones they want to see, maybe I'll do it. I've pretty much kind of got all the movies picked out that I want to do for Halloween, but I'm always open for suggestions, so let me know if there's any particular movies you want to see, and I'll watch it if I haven't seen it and see what I can learn from it. But here's another thing that I want you guys to do. When you're watching movies, try to learn from it, Try to think like, what would I do in this situation, or what is there to learn? There's a lot of lessons that a lot of people don't realize, you know what I mean, in a lot of movies, especially the older ones. So I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm going to hopefully have this video up tomorrow. I got a lot of things to do today, but everybody have a good one, and I will see y'all on the next one.